Welcome everyone. My name is Emmy and my channel is Holistic Genie with Emmy. And this is my dear friend Patricia and her channel is Spiritual Healing. Welcome back. We are going to get into the fourth video of healing from the self-devaluation conflict according to German New Medicine.
That's right. And in this lesson in particular, we're going to be looking at how to support yourself as you move through the healing phase.
Never fails.
Mom.
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, go ask Johnny. He's bleeding.
Oh dear.
It's all right. We were just talking about interruptions, and we had a beautiful prayer time before this. And if interruptions and distractions happen, please help us to keep a lighthearted attitude. And we're being tested, right?
Yeah. Well, and he's so cute.
Yeah, and I know that our audiences don't mind seeing.
They don't mind.
him.
Absolutely.
And it's fine. Actually, I think they would rather see him in videos than not, actually. I've had so many cute comments. So I think it just brings an element of realness to this. Like if you're watching and you have wanted to start a YouTube channel or another platform on social media, and you're worried about your home life or whatever, just do it.
Yes.
Just do it. People
Yes.
love genuine. People love authenticity. People love real. People love relatable. And,
Yeah. And absolutely letting go of perfection, because it does not have to be perfect. Life is not perfect. And this is life. And you have a very busy household. You do. I live, I don't have a busy household, but I live near an Air Force base. So sometimes I can get a lot of air traffic. Like we have the snowbirds come and practice here, and we have some big military planes that go over. And so I have that. And so, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yes. So, yeah. So
but we were recapping. I think we were recapping the other.
Okay. So yeah. So we're going to look at
it hurts. Is Johnny out there?
Did you want to go, Emmy, and I'll do the recap?
Yeah, okay, let's do that. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay. I'll just change the view here. So yeah, so in the last 3 videos on German New Medicine and fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and the self-devaluation conflict. The first one we talked about what is German New Medicine and what are the 5 laws of German New Medicine. And then in the second one, we talked about the specific conflict related to fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, which is the self-devaluation conflict. And then in the third one, we talked about some healing modalities that you can use to help support yourself move out of to move out of the self-devaluation conflict. And so there were a couple of things in that video that I had wanted to talk about that I forgot. So I'll just dive into those while Emmy's dealing with little Bill's foot injury. So the first thing was that in that video, we didn't actually talk about specific healing modalities for self-devaluation. We talked about healing in general. And the reason for that is because that's what needs to happen. We move through these different levels of healing, which we talked about in that third video. And it's that, full embodied healing process that we need to move through. And so we gave all different types of ideas of how you can do that. And one of the things I wanted to mention was that the self-love can be a really, really hard one to heal and to embody. And I know when I first started working on my own healing process, like doing Louise Hay work. There he is. doing the Louise Hay work was really, really difficult because I couldn't even say the affirmations. Here, I'll just change the view and bring you back. There we go. I couldn't even say the affirmations that she would write about in her books and stuff because it was just so contrary to how I felt about myself. But now when I go back and read those affirmations, because I've done so much healing, I'm like, oh yeah, I am a beautiful person. I do love myself, and the things that she writes about now, I can accept those. But it was hard at first. And when I worked as an EFT practitioner, with EFT tapping, what you do is you have a setup statement. And the first part of the statement is the problem. And the second part of the statement is the acceptance statement. And the common acceptance statement is, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Well, so many of my clients couldn't even say that. So we had to, work on, I can consider the possibility of loving myself, or just, I can consider the possibility that someday I will love myself. Like we had to gently work into that, and eventually we would get there. So I just wanted to, acknowledge that self-love piece can be really, really hard to get to. And it's this whole sort of comprehensive healing process, all the different stages that we talked about in video 3 that begin to get you there.
Yeah. So. I was one of those people who had a hard time with, because I was introduced to EFT probably about 15 years ago by one of my counselors. And I had been on a medication trial and error roller coaster for probably about 3 years. And this doctor was, he just felt bad for me, so he was like, well, maybe an alternative form of healing would be helpful for you. And he showed me that, and I just was like, I squirmed inside when I said that acceptance part, because I did not believe that at all. I didn't believe that at all. I did not deeply and unconditionally love myself. No way.
I had such a similar experience about 20 years ago, and working with a counselor. I had injured myself at my job. I worked as a pharmacy assistant in a hospital, and I'd injured both my arms. And part of the protocol was I was to see a psychologist about that. So they sent me to this psychologist, and he introduced me to the EFT tapping. He was such a bad therapist. And he sat there, he had this terrible cold, and he was like blowing his nose, and then he's doing this thing. And I had absolutely no faith in the guy. And I was like, this is a bunch of crap. And so, I turned away from it. And I feel, kind of, I regret that I had such a bad introduction to it, because it's actually such a powerful healing tool. And so I came back around to it several years later, but it was my first experience was not very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I just want to also just talk about one more thing before we go into supporting ourselves. Well, this is part of it. I did briefly talk about, that's probably looking backwards, isn't it? The emotion code
No.
by Bradley Nelson. And this is like EFT tapping on steroids, and you don't have to do the whole acceptance statement and all that. It's a super simple process where, they give you this sort of this flow chart. You get a flow chart, so it guides you through this process of asking your body. You start off with a question: is there a trapped emotion that can be released now that is contributing to blah, blah, blah? You can say contributing to my lack of self-worth. and you use a form of muscle testing. And that's the only drawback with this technique is you have to be able to muscle test yourself. And there's different ways that you can do that, and they talk about that. And I use this technique where tell me yes, and it's soft and smooth. Tell me no, and it goes all sticky.
Okay.
And that technique works for me. You can use a pendulum. I just noticed that my colors are flickering. Is that?
I see that.
Yeah, okay. You
Interesting.
know what? I'm going to throw the screen down
Okay.
and it's going to be bright. There I am. Okay. I just have so much natural light in front of me. So doing the muscle testing. So you simply ask the body a question. It gives you an answer. And the way you ask is you have this emotion code chart and you just ask, it'll guide you to the, whether it's in column A or B, and what row it's in. And then you just, once you get into the row, then you ask, is it this, is it this, is it this? And then you get the emotion and it'll be, anxiety, nervousness, lack of control, low self-esteem, that one will come. So once you have the emotion, you then literally just go through this process of using a magnet or your hand to swipe it away over your head like 3 times, 10 times if it's ancestral. And I tell you, it sounds wacky, but holy cow. I cleared like 800 emotions over like a 6-month period. So
Wow.
I highly recommend this process because you're not dealing with those things like having to convince yourself that you love yourself. It's just clearing these energy balls. It's just moving them out of your system. It's just a clean expulsion.
Nice. Nice.
So
I wonder, interesting. I'm gonna try that. I've never read Emotion Code.
yeah, so Bradley Nelson, he's on YouTube. I can put a link below to his introduction video on his YouTube channel. And so, he teaches you how to do it on YouTube. You can get the book or you can get an app. And you definitely need the charts to do it. Yeah, and it's just such a powerful healing tool. He doesn't talk about past lives. Which I think it's because of his Christian background. He doesn't actually believe in past lives, but he talks about ancestral work.
Okay.
And I've talked to a lot of people who have done the emotion code, and I got so many past lives when I was doing this. I was getting healing stuff from past lives over and over and over again.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's the most powerful healing tool that I've ever come across, which then I think cleared the space to go into doing the Course in Miracles. That was, part of the purification that allowed me to sit in and go into doing the Course in Miracles, which is basically going through an ego death. And yeah,
A complete and total unlearning of the ego thought system and simultaneously replacing it with Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
It is a wild transformation.
It sure is.
It really is. But like Patricia just said, a certain level of healing and purification has to happen first in order to even be able to be receptive to this kind of stuff. Like if I were to come to A Course in Miracles even 5 years ago, I think that it may have ruined the opportunity. I've been in 12-step recovery for quite a while, and they always tell us that the program should work on attraction rather than promotion. Because if you go out and evangelize this stuff to people who aren't ready to hear it or receive it, you could ruin a future opportunity when they are ready.
Yeah.
So, if you're watching this and A Course in Miracles sounds interesting, Patricia and I are going to do a mini series on what to expect when you come to Course in Miracles. So,
And we also have we've already done a video on sort of basically what the Course in Miracles is about.
yeah, like a
And
intro description. Yeah.
yeah. And, it really does sort of land for you when you're ready. Like I bought the book in 2010. And, it took me all this time to be able to really sit down and commit to doing the actual course. And I tried a few times over the years, but I just wasn't ready. And that's perfectly fine. When you're ready, it'll it'll invite you in. And if you do go into it and you have sort of an off-putting experience, lay that aside and just say, maybe it's just not time, and I'll try again another year, 2, 5, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move into, so if you haven't seen our other 3 videos on the German New Medicine, we'll link all of those below. But as you are healing conflicts, and we're going to talk a bit about sort of the spiral of healing conflicts, you're going to move into the healing phase. And the healing phase is going to look like illness, sickness, inflammation, pain, depression, brain fog. It's going to be super, super uncomfortable. And so we want to talk about, supporting yourself through this process. And probably the first number one thing is don't be afraid of it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. When we become symptomatic, we've been conditioned over the years, through our parents and doctors and school teachers and pretty much everyone in our lives that when you have symptoms, there's something wrong. You're sick. You're fighting something off. It basically has been labeled as bad or something is wrong, when in actuality, it's good and everything is right.
Yes.
Everything is just right.
Yeah.
The most of the time, and we're hoping that this isn't the case with the self-devaluation conflict, because that can happen for a very, very long period of time. But so hopefully the healing phase isn't directly proportional to the time you spent in conflict. But the healing phase, like the severity of the healing phase, seems to be proportional to the severity of the conflict, the perception, the severity of the perception of
yes.
the conflict. So if you perceived whatever it was that caused the self-devaluation, or let's use a different example just for this particular thing. If you had someone who was murdered, like that would be a really severely perceived conflict, right? So the
Right.
healing phase of that would be worse than the healing phase of, someone calling you a name and not catching you by surprise.
Yeah.
So we haven't found as of yet any information that correlates the time spent in a conflict being proportional to the time spent in healing. We're not sure, but it would kind of make sense with this healing spiral that after the conflict is resolved, that you may heal in layers. We don't know, don't quote us, we don't know that for sure, but it just, with our own experience, that seems to be what is occurring or what has occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also because the self-devaluation, because the discomfort of apparent illness is the resolution to the conflict. Part of the problem is we create more conflict by getting upset over being sick.
Mm.
And then that also that creates like a sort of a never ending circle that you just don't get out of. And so one of the most important things that we want to bring to this concept is, if you can at the very least let go of the fear or the frustration or the anger of being in the healing phase and having these symptoms of illness, that is going to help you move up the spiral of healing and move out of the conflicts eventually, because you're not adding to it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the really, really important thing. And yeah, we don't know, we haven't quite figured out, you know, how long these healing phases take. But by not adding to it, by getting upset about being sick or having fear around being sick or shame or, those kind of emotions, like when you are not feeling well, you know that you've likely resolved a conflict. You may not know that you've resolved a conflict, but the indication that you have will be that you feel like total crap. and Emmy and I, and so what do you do when you go into this healing phase? How do you support yourself? Well, one of the first things you do is you acknowledge, okay, I'm in this healing phase and I'm going to take the time to nurture myself. And Emmy and I both had some sort of conflict resolution about 3 weeks ago. And we had promised to do this video, as a fourth video, probably the following week. And we were both in a healing phase for almost 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit us hard. And what did we do? We didn't do a video. We just took the time to take care of ourselves in the best way possible. We didn't feel like we had to fulfill this commitment of having this video out at a certain time. We just stepped back and said, nope, can't do it.
Mm.
And interestingly, we came out of it the same day.
No, isn't it interesting?
It's so weird.
And to be honest, Patricia, if we would have tried to record, I don't think our brains would have worked.
Mine wouldn't have. Mine were. I could hardly even speak during parts of it. Like my ability to form words was so muddled.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that this was okay. And also because Emmy and I are doing the Course in Miracles together, you're constantly healing conflicts. Like it's just a process of resolving conflict.
Which is why I recommend, I don't know, if it calls to you, if it seems really interesting and you're really hungry for it, then I would say yes, you're ready. But I don't know, it's really hard to gauge because it's all subjective, and how do you know where someone else is at in their healing journey? It's just, if it's attractive to you, you're probably ready.
Yeah. And like we said, we're going to do some more videos about especially what to expect when you're moving through the Course Miracles, which there was no sort of framework for us that I could find. We just sort of limped our way through and in asking these questions when we were like flat on the floor and sort of getting these little pointers. That's how we came across the German New Medicine. I was in such a sick phase, and it was Aaron Abke that said, look into German New Medicine.
Yeah. I've experienced such profound and intense ego death, and I know we're kind of crossing topics here, but when you're healing, you can also be experiencing part of that ego death as well, and it feels like your life is falling apart. it feels like you are going insane. It feels like your emotions are going to kill you. Like it is so chaotic and
It's
upside
so
down.
true.
It is just like, like what the F?
But what we have experienced over and over again is you move through it. And then again, coming back to the German new medicine, we know we are moving through the healing phase, and so supporting ourselves in that. So, you know, getting rest, letting go of commitments, drinking lots of good quality water, really good diet, like don't be doing the sugars and the processed foods and all that, like treat your body really, really well. Epsom salts baths, aromatherapy, get some healing work like Reiki, massage, things to help sort of calm your nervous system, meditation. I mean, there's so many things you can do to really help support yourself. And especially with diet, like you may want to seek the support of a naturopath or a nutritionist. And the fourth phase, I think it's the fourth phase, is the microbial phase. Is that right? The fourth law?
The fourth law. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you know a lot about that whole microbial phase, and you make your own homemade fermented food.
Yes. Yes. So the fourth law of German new medicine is that you have these seasonal workers, the bacteria and the fungi come in at the end of the healing phase and break down any excess tissues or tumors or lesions or whatever that was formed if the self-devaluation caused a proliferation. The conflicts can either cause a proliferation, which is cell growth, or a breakdown of the tissues. So in these bacteria and these fungi come in after the cell proliferation and will break the stuff down and get rid of the lesion. And we've been taught that bacteria and viruses are what causes the illness, but in fact they're the cleanup crew of illnesses. So it's a completely different paradigm. It's a completely different paradigm, but it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, and most of us in North America have a very unhealthy gut biome because of the use of antibiotics, not only orally, like when I first started working as a pharmacy assistant in 1986. And in those days, antibiotics were one of the most commonly prescribed drugs. And kids were getting antibiotics for absolutely everything under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And they just destroy your entire gut biome. They destroy all the good bacteria that is in your gut. And back in those days, the pharmacists wouldn't even acknowledge that you'd want to supplement an antibiotic regime with probiotics. They wouldn't even consider it. It took like a good 20 years before the evidence started to show enough for the medical profession to accept, oh yeah, okay, we need to be like adding some probiotics along with these antibiotics. And then eventually they stopped over prescribing. So but it's still a problem because it's in the the foods, it's in the meats, and it's added to eggs and the animals that are producing milk and cheese and eggs and meat.
Yeah. So taking a probiotic in pill form is helpful if you do your research and find a good one. But the best way to help heal your gut with probiotics is to make your own fermented food. See, all of these really good, really healthy bacterias that our gut needs. And by the way, your gut has more neurons than your brain. So your gut is like another brain.
Yeah.
And it needs this bacteria in balance to function optimally. And all of these healthy, beneficial bacteria grow on and in vegetables on the surface. So when you shred them up, when you cut them up really tiny and have a lot of surface area for them to grow, and then put them in a saltwater brine, and there's specific recipes for this, only the good bacteria can grow in that saltwater brine. And so it takes about 3 weeks to a few months to grow a healthy population of probiotic bacteria in your jars. But so long as everything is underneath the water, nothing harmful can grow on that food. You may have a layer of like mold or whatever's on the top, but it cannot grow underneath the water. So you just scoop that away, or a lot of times in the old days, they had a big vat down in the cellar or the basement or whatever, and there'd be this mold blanket over the top, and they'd move the mold blanket away, scoop the sauerkraut out, and put it back, because nothing harmful can grow in the saltwater brine. It has to have enough of it. If it dries out, most definitely it can mold and turn bad. But it is so easy. There's so many videos on YouTube. You don't need any special equipment. You just need a mason jar and a lid and salt and purified water, not tap water. It's got to be distilled water, because tap water, even purified tap water, has chlorine in it, and it will kill the bacteria. So you have to use distilled water. And then you just shred up your vegetables or cut them up. I do one particular vegetable per jar, and I really like cabbage. Red and green cabbage is my favorite. And if you can get locally grown, that's even better, because you're having the bacteria that's in your area where you live. The vegetables have to be organic. They can't have any pesticides in them or on them, because again, it'll kill the bacteria. So organic, preferably locally grown. Shred up a head of cabbage, follow the directions on whatever YouTube video you pick, put it in your jar, and basically you just let it sit there for the first few days. If you don't have a special top that will burp your container, you'll have to burp it yourself, but that's only for the first few days until that methane gas gets all out of there. But yeah, and then you just, I measure mine out, but you could just take a spoonful at lunch or dinner to start out with, and voila. And then in a couple of weeks, do 2 spoons, one at lunch, one at dinner. And this stuff has trillions of healthy probiotic bacteria in it that you can grow on your countertop, and it is far better for you than any probiotic in pill form.
And much cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my husband was on a really expensive probiotic. It was like $2 a capsule, and we got that through the natural path, and it really did help because it was a super high quality probiotic. So can you like find one of those videos and recommend it? Maybe we could link to that below.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like not right now, but when we post this video, we'll have a reference for that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know I looked, and because I've never done this, and I think it's a brilliant idea. And I got a little confused, and I wasn't sure which would be the right recipe or process, So if you have one that you could recommend, that would be awesome.
Okay. I'll try to find one. I was fortunate enough to have someone show me in person how to do it. So I didn't have to. I'd like to do a video on it myself.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That
Yeah,
to create one would be.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out like a camera setup, because I'd have to record it like on my phone or something.
Yeah, filming in the kitchen is really hard.
Yeah.
On my other YouTube channel, the Create and Crochet, I had started off with Create, Nurture, Heal, and it was originally just sort of, creative things like dot painting, wire wrapping, and crochet, and then nurturing things and different recipes and, like healthy soups and stuff. And just like setting up to film in the kitchen, that's a whole other talent. And I couldn't master it.
Yeah,
So,
you've got angle and lighting and
yeah,
sound and yeah.
it's tricky.
Hmm.
But if we're not trying to be perfect, too bad we didn't live close by. I could come and I could be the camera person.
Yeah, right.
So we're a whole country apart.
We are.
Yeah, like 5,000 miles or something, I think.
Oh my gosh. I didn't
Yeah,
even
4 to
think about
5,000
that.
miles. It's
Yeah.
a long ways.
Long ways.
So yeah, so certainly a really good um, nutritional regime. You just really, really, you don't want to be eating crappy food and then expecting your body to be able to go through these natural healing phases if it's not getting the support that it needs. Good quality sleep, so important. And nowadays with our devices, with our phones, I think it's quite common to have the phone by the bedside and on.
Hmm.
So just for the electromagnetic fields, at the very least, the phone should be off. And better yet, not even in the room. And better yet, um, avoiding any kind of technology at least an hour before bedtime, if not two. And we become so habituated into being connected on these devices.
Hmm.
Um, I'm old enough to remember having black and white TV that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't, rabbit ears. We had one phone for 10 families. It was a party line. And, we just didn't have all of this technology. And it has become super seductive, super addictive. And to be able to turn that off, let your brain, let your eyes get used to the nighttime, turn down the lights, turn the lights low, and let the body start to move into its natural circadian rhythm. That's another thing that's really out of whack in our culture. And everything's lit up. Certainly in the towns, the street lights they're so bright. It's like daylight. And it's actually a problem for the night birds and bugs because they think it's daylight. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, the technology and the frequencies can be very intrusive. So, um, if this is all like very overwhelming for you and you're just starting out, I would recommend picking one or two things that you're drawn to, like working with your sleep or working with your diet, and just form one small habit, like putting your phone on your dresser 10 feet away. And then once you get used to that, stack another habit on top of it. Like, okay, I'm going to put my phone on the dresser, and before I go to sleep, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. And then when you get used to that, then stack another habit on top of it. It is so, the process of healing can be so overwhelming and you just don't know where to start. So just find something that you feel drawn to and work with that and stack habits on top of it. When you build slowly, like healing takes years.
It does.
Takes
Yeah.
years. It's not a race. So just like take a breath, let it out, calm down. It's not a race. You don't have to be done tomorrow. And trust me, you don't want to be done tomorrow because that would be a really horrific healing experience to heal in one day.
Well, and that's what sudden awakenings are. That's,
Yeah.
when people have sudden spiritual awakenings, it can be super traumatic because essentially the whole ego dies and the false self just drops away, and you're left in this state of absolute nothingness. And for many people, especially, and this happens to people who aren't even on a spiritual journey, it's it's such a shock to the system that they often end up in a state of psychosis. They end up in the psychiatric ward. If there's some sort of spiritual work that's been going on beforehand, there can be a sense of, oh my gosh, something really massive just happened here. But to integrate spiritual awakening or near-death experiences are similar to that. People who have near-death experiences, when they come back, integrating that experience of being on the other side can take years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's such good advice to just and start with what is the easiest too, what seems to be the most digestible, the easiest thing to, which may be, having a nice warm Epsom salts bath before bedtime, and that becoming part of your daily routine. But and one of the most important things is to observe when you are attacking yourself for not doing something right, or right, perceived as right or perceived as wrong. Notice the tendency to attack yourself, and just try to have awareness of that and go, oh, that's there. Do I really want to attack myself like that? Maybe not. And just gently bring in just that awareness and give yourself permission to be sick. Give yourself permission to not want to talk to someone, on the phone, or to go out for tea or whatever. Give yourself permission to just be okay with what is, and just watch this self-attack, and then see if you can bring a little bit of loving to yourself in that moment. Or at the very least, just notice it and go, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Awareness is key. Awareness is the masculine part of healing, and acceptance and forgiveness is the feminine part of healing. So, when you're looking at something, it can be helpful to bring in both aspects, the awareness and the acceptance and the forgiveness. Like, okay, I am aware that I'm beating myself up because I really need to rest, but I have this, that, and the other to get done. And, do I really want to tell myself that I'm lazy and that I'm useless and I'm good for nothing because I need to rest? Okay, I'm aware that I'm saying this stuff to myself. I accept that this is where I'm at right now, and I forgive myself for being mean. That's it.
That's it.
That's all you got to do. And when it happens again, okay, I am aware that I'm being mean to myself. I accept that this is where I am right now, and I forgive myself for being a meanie. Doing something as simple as that can get the ball rolling as far as
because the awareness piece is so important. I think we don't realize how much our self-talk is hurting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that awareness of just even recognizing it, even that can just begin to release it. Just the awareness of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the Course of Miracles, there's a whole sort of forgiveness theme. Forgiveness is huge. And the forgiveness begins at home. It begins with forgiving myself for mostly what it boils down to, forgiving myself for having the wrong perception, for seeing incorrectly and not seeing through the eyes of love, through the eyes of the divine and seeing through the eyes of consciousness, of the ego and of fear, the programmed self. There's the programmed conditioned self. That's what holds all of this crap. And then there's the true self, the love self, the divine self. And we are so often making the mistake of sitting in the false self.
Yeah.
So it's just correcting that mistake of being in the false self and forgiving oneself for having that error of perception.
Yes. It's not an evil to be punished. It's a mistake to be corrected.
Exactly. And as the Course describes, sin is exactly that. Sin is not an evil to be punished. It's an error to be corrected.
Yes.
Yeah. So that actually just one thing I wanted to touch on was healing the Christian wound, which is a huge wound that has caused a lot of self-hatred. And for that, I would totally recommend Aaron Apke's YouTube channel. He has 2 playlists. One is called Moving Backwards. He was raised in a Christian family. He actually became a minister, and then he left his faith because he became so disillusioned with what Christianity was representing. And he threw the baby out with the bathwater, but eventually came back. And he's a brilliant teacher in helping heal the Christian wound. And the Moving Backwards series is beautiful for that. And he also has another playlist called The Mystical Jesus, which is also really powerful to help heal that Christian wound.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was, that was a big part of my healing journey as well. I think the biggest thing for me when I started questioning, what I questioned was all fear-based narratives. And this was in 2020 when all this stuff was going on in the world. And I just saw all this fear and all these agendas being pushed with fear behind it. And I'm like, this is not of God. Like, God would not use fear to control and manipulate people. And so then I just went through like all of the different areas in my life, all of the different systems and things that I was involved in. And I was like, where are there fear-based narratives? And, I found them everywhere. But surprisingly, the most pervasive fear-based narrative is in the Christian dogma with the concept of hell. And if you don't believe this way or think this way or accept Jesus as your savior, then you're going to barbecue for an eternity. And even though there's nothing in the Bible in the New Testament that Jesus talked about that, he never said anything like that. It has evolved into this very manipulative, very subtle, in my eyes, control tactic. And I just like, God would never use fear to control and manipulate. God would never do that. God is love. And that is the opposite. In my eyes, that's the opposite of love.
Yeah. And this goes into a whole other topic.
Yeah.
We won't go there, but this is why I love the movie Pollyanna, because in it her aunt and the town that she ends up moving into, they preach this fearful God, and she just sort of through the movie keeps bringing this love, because her parents were Christian, but they preached love. They preached all the parts of the Bible that were about love. And I think it's so she's out in a field with minister who he does these big, loud, booming, fear of God sermons. And I think she says something to the effect that, I can't remember, but she says, love is mentioned in the Bible a lot of times, something to that effect. And maybe you could start preaching about love. And so he goes and looks it up, and I think he says there's something like 830 references to love in the Bible. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but what a powerful movie that was. That was showing us that love is there, and then Pollyanna gets kind of almost demonized in a way. Like, if you're a positive person, like I've had people say this to me, "Oh, you're so Pollyanna." It's like, thank you. It's like being Pollyanna is a bad thing, but that movie actually has some really powerful lessons in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't watched it, but it sounds great.
Oh, you haven't watched it? Oh my gosh.
No.
Well,
Um,
there's a recommendation if you can find it
okay.
somewhere.
I mean, I think I read a book, Pollyanna. I thought, I don't know. It was when I was a kid, but
So yeah, this is the old Disney one with Haley Mills, and I think it was
oh,
made like in 1965 or something like that.
oh
So
wow. Okay, I'm
it's an
gonna look
old
it up.
Disney film. Yeah.
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 I just wanted to say one more thing about Christianity and if you have been wounded by that. Um, when I was coming out of the Christian religion, the hardest part was I felt like this sense of betrayal. Like I was betraying Jesus by not following these teachings and beliefs. But what happened was my relationship with Jesus was strengthened. And I'm going to get emotional. It was strengthened through all of this. I wasn't leaving my God behind. He was drawing me to him.
Right.
And I tell you what, I am so much more closer to Jesus or Yahshua, whatever you would like to call him, than I was ever going to church. I've learned so much more about him and his life and what he did and what he taught. And in addition to that, I've also um experienced firsthand some of the things um that he did, like being persecuted for teaching love and healing. And I can't tell you how many times I have see, I believe that Jesus led me to and Reiki and taking Reiki classes and becoming attuned to the energies was one of the most healing transformations and transitions I've ever had in my life. But when I started to talk about the miraculous things that were happening with my Christian friends, they told me that I was practicing witchcraft and that I was devil worshiping. And it was just like, what?
Yeah.
So, he was outcast and he was demonized and he went through all this stuff. And I'm not saying that what I went through is anything like what Jesus went through, but I did get a little taste of it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when the people that you love think that you're doing something evil. It's just like,
Yeah.
and
And
then
it shows you the depth of that indoctrination, of that fear, the fear of what is actually the truth. And, we need to go way back
yeah,
to when the Bible was actually written. and the New Testament. And when Jesus's teachings that were left through the apostles, his disciples as apostles, I'm not Christian, but I do know some of this. We have to realize that what he was teaching was pure truth, pure enlightenment. And when you have people interpreting those teachings from a level of unenlightenment, those teachings are going to be misinterpreted. They are going to be wrongly perceived and wrongly taught. And that is pretty much what's happened within Christianity. And, there is stuff around power and control and, how better to control people than to say the only way they can find God is through the church and not directly through themselves. And if you try to find God through yourselves, you're a heretic and you're going to burn in hell. When in fact, what Christ taught is we are God. We are all, God is in everyone, everything, anything that is life is an emanation of God himself. So, the fear that has been instilled goes back generations, thousands of years, and it's a huge wound to overcome. And so it takes a lot of courage to step out of that fear-based doctrine and sit in the truth and deal with the persecution of that. I'm very lucky because I don't come from that background. Kind of joked about this. I grew up as a heathen. And my dad chased this Bible salesman off the yard one day, and I swear to God, if he had a gun, he would have shot him. And so, a lot of drinking, partying, race car driving, crazy life, right? So Christianity wasn't my experience. So I don't have that wound to heal, but I see it. I see it in you. I see it in others. And Aaron talks about like losing everyone except his immediate family when he turned away from it. He lost everyone he knew. And, and so it takes a lot of courage. And, maybe people aren't ready to make that change. And that is fine. That is fine.
Yeah, I've I've had a total revamp of my friend group. And it's beautiful now. It was really hard going through the transition. It was very lonely.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, God gave me this beautiful connection directly to him. Am I going to listen to that, or am I going to listen to people?
Yeah. And you can be guaranteed that people, most everyone, is living through the eyes of their ego, of their conditioned self. And very few people are living through the expression of truth, of divine consciousness, of God consciousness. Like, we're so conditioned to live from this perception of the separate self. And that is the awakening process, waking out of the illusion of the separate self into the truth of who we really are. And it can be a really painful process. And it takes, it can take a lot of courage. Oh, we kind of digressed on that one.
Well, we prayed, Patricia and I do affirmative prayer, which is a very specific type of prayer. And we do this 4 times a week. And before we started this video, we did a prayer, and we asked that we share what the audience needed to hear, and that it flowed, and that, so, what we trusted, that whatever came out was what
was supposed to come out.
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle does that. He says, they tell me I need to have a title for my talk. And maybe that's what we need to do from now on. Have the talk with no title.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's what I love about how we work together because we're so authentic together. And it really does just like there's no script. There's a couple little notes of things I'd like to remember, but we're just shooting from the hip here. And really, like Emmy said, we pray ahead of time to really bring through us what needs to be heard. And so this dialogue was really, really important because I think the Christian wound is such a huge wound. It just, it's so pervasive and really at the root of lack of self-worth. It's at the root of self-devaluation conflict on so many levels.
It really is. I mean, one of the prayers that we said in one of the churches that I went to every time, like it was started out, the church service is, Lord, please forgive me. I am not worthy to receive you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that is so awful.
Yeah. And
What
so
an
then
awful thing to teach children.
I know. And so what do we do in the Course of Miracles? So much of our work is correcting that by saying, I am willing to receive you. The lessons are, I will receive you. And so obviously, like for the Course of Miracles to really bring that one back again and again and again in the lessons, a lot of the lessons are repetitive, and that one always comes back. I will receive your love today. I will receive your blessings today.
Amen.
So, yeah. Hoo-wee.
All right. Well,
Well, on that note,
on that note, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching and listening.
yeah,
And Patricia and I plan on working together in the future quite extensively. So
yeah,
you'll see more of us.
yeah, we have plans, or we're being directed anyway.
Yes, we're being directed.
Yeah. All right.
All
This was
right.
so lovely. Thank you, Emmy. I just really enjoy spending our time together in these conversations, which are just so important, I think.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so too.
All right. Okay,
Blessings,
thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.